My son drained my bank account and took his wife and her mother to Rome. I just smiled to myself, and 3 days later he Yo07 called me sobbing. Mom, what did you do? My retribution was complete. The day I Yo15 needed to breathe the most was the very day my son took every single dollar Yo and 20 without even leaving a note. Eleanor Ellie Price froze for a long Yo25 time. She sat on her old worn cloth armchair, the same one she bought when Zo131 Jackson turned 7, using the first decent paycheck she earned cleaning homes in the Hollywood Hills. In front Zo37 of her, the cell phone screen glowed with a notification that chilled her blood. Available balance all. She read Zo44 it again and again, and a fourth time. Her hands trembled, not from old age. Yofiki, though she was 68 years strong, but from something deeper, a sickening knot that Dofi5 forms when the soul understands, but the heart refuses to accept. She called the 101 bank, a robot answered. Then a human representative tried to ask questions. They told her movements had been 108 made online, wire transfers for large amounts totaling over 80,000. When 13, it was her entire life's work. Her savings, her security, her only safety net. And where did the money go? She 21 asked, her voice broken as if she knew the answer, but needed to hear it from someone else. 8 was all transferred to 129, an account in the name of Jackson Arthur Price. Mom, the executive replied indifferently. Do you want to file a LUM35 fraud report? Ellie didn't respond. She hung up without saying a word. Silence 140 filled the house. The only sounds were the ticking of the clock in the kitchen and the buzz of a dying fluorescent 1946 light bulb outside. The ice cream truck played its familiar tune, oblivious to 152, the abyss that had just opened inside her. Then the landline rang, the old 157 phone she kept out of habit. Hello, she said, her voice flat. Ellie, 2003, honey, did you see your Jackson's Instagram? It was the excited voice of Doris, her longtime neighbor. He's in 2010 Rome, child, eating fancy food with his wife and mother-in-law. Lord, what a life they live. They look like movie 2017 stars. Ellie swallowed hard. Her soul seemed to leave her body for an instant. 2022, she walked slowly to her room, opened the drawer where she kept her old smartphone, and searched for her son's 2029 profile. She wasn't big on social media, but she followed him from a distance, 234, like someone peering through a window at a life that no longer belonged to them. There he was, Jackson, her only son. The 2D42 boy she brought into the world with pain and raised alone since his father left her for another woman. The same son she 2049 gave everything to, even the family land her parents left her so he could go to college. He was smiling, a glass in 2056 hand, dressed in a crisp white shirt, embracing Tanya, his wife, and Rhonda. 3 the Wowzer 2, the mother-in-law who always looked down her nose at Ellie. The photo caption read, Rome, my new beginning. I deserve 3010 this. And in the comments, Tanya had written, good things come to those who 315 wait. Thanks for everything, mama-in-law, with a money emoji. 3021 Ellie didn't cry. She didn't scream or break anything. She just stood there 3026 holding the phone like a burning brick. Then, without anyone to notice, she smiled. But it was a different kind of 3-side-33 smile, as if she finally understood something she had avoided seeing for years. Far away under a cloudy sky and 3542 among the cobblestone streets of Rome, Jackson raised his glass without guilt. 3-47C. Tanya said, sipping expensive wine, it was a good idea to take the money. 353, she's gonna die soon anyway. Better we use it before it goes to medical bills. Rhonda, her mother, let out a 400 harsh laugh. Clueless old lady. She doesn't even know what a plane is. She was never going to do anything useful 4006 with that cash. Jackson didn't say anything. He looked at the Coliseum with shining eyes. But 414, something was churning inside him, but he kept quiet, just as he had learned to 409 do since he was a boy and was hungry. And his mother would tell him, hold on, baby. We'll have it tomorrow. The walls 426 of Ellie's house seemed older that night. Everything was in its place, but nothing felt the same. On the shelf were 4034 photos of Jackson, small in press school in his first middle school uniform, the 440 day he received his college diploma. Everything she had done, she did for him. At 18, she sold her engagement ring 448 to pay for his high school. At 23, she gave him the family land her daddy left 453 her. At 30, she helped with the wedding expenses, even though Tanya never cared 458 for her. Ellie cooked for him, washed his clothes, and cleaned up after him 5U3, and he only drifted further away. Mom, you don't understand this world, he'd 5 or 9 say dismissively. Things aren't done like they used to be. Tanya and I have big plans, and son, I'm part of those 5-17 plans. You'll always be in my heart, Mama, but you can't be tied to me for life. A week before discovering the 525 betrayal, Ellie had tried to visit Jackson at his apartment in Studio City. She brought a tray of her famous fried 531 chicken and collard greens that she made herself. She rang the bell. No one opened the door. She waited under the 539 sun, sitting on a bench for 2 hours until the doorman approached her. Are 544 you looking for Mr. Jackson Price? Yes, I'm his mother. Ah, well, I was 5D49 instructed not to let you in if you come unannounced. Ellie swallowed. And why is 555 that I couldn't tell you, ma'am. But that's what they told me. She walked 601 back home. She didn't take the metro bus. She wanted the air to hit her face, 606, even if it was hot and dirty. She thought of every meal she denied herself, every dawn she worked overtime. 6 and 14, every penny she saved for her son. That same night, Doris came to visit. She's 60-20, brought pecan pie and coffee. You've always been strong, Ellie. Don't let this break your heart. Jackson is young. 6-27, maybe he'll come to his senses. Ellie sighed, her gaze distant. 60-32, do you think children ever regret it, Doris? Yes, of course they do. When 6-38 their mother isn't around, they realize everything. Well, I hope it's not too late when he realizes. And what are you 6-45 gonna do? Ellie looked up. In her eyes was something different, something that hadn't been there before. 65-2, I'm gonna smile just like they taught me. Doris frowned. Smile, what do you 60-59 mean? I've cried enough, Doris. Now I'm gonna smile in silence because I have 7-4, nothing left to lose. And when a woman has nothing left to lose, she becomes 7-10 dangerous. Meanwhile, night was falling in Rome. Jackson was stepping out of the 716 shower when he heard Tanya's voice on the balcony speaking on the phone. Yes, we did it. The old lady never even knew 723. The money's here. Tomorrow we open the account in Spain and we get rid of Jackson. Yes, of course. He thinks we're 730 in this together. Such a fool. Jackson stopped. He didn't move. He felt the 736 water freeze on his skin. He didn't say anything. He went back to the room as if he hadn't heard a thing. He lay down 743 next to Tanya, who pretended to be asleep. He closed his eyes, but something had changed, and he didn't 750 know yet that the worst was coming. Back in South Central Los Angeles, Ellie was 7:55 preparing a cup of chamomile tea. The night was thick. The streetlights 8001 flickered. Outside, dogs fought over a trash bag. Inside, she picked up her 8007 notebook, the one she used to jot down recipes she never got to cook. She wrote 8012, something with her shaky handwriting. This is not the end. It is the beginning of my silence, and my silence will hurt 8020 more than any scream. Then she closed the notebook, lay down in bed, and for 8025, the first time in a long time, she slept without tears. And while she slept in 8030, her humble home, her son in a hotel suite in Rome checked his phone. He 8C36 found a bank notification. Account blocked due to suspicious activity. 841 what? He muttered, staring at the screen. The first crack had just formed. 846 and Jackson didn't know that his mother in silence had already begun to move. 852, sometimes pain doesn't scream. Sometimes pain sits, observes, and waits. 858 for the right moment. And that moment was just beginning. The night hadn't entirely left South 905 Central. There was still that sticky humidity between the tin roofs and the broken sidewalks. Ellie got up at dawn. 9:13, her bones creaking as they did every day. But this time she didn't feel old. 9:18, something new was beating inside her. It wasn't rage or sadness. It was a determination her soul had never known 9:25 before. While heating water on the gas stove, she stared at the blue flame. The 9:31 whistle of the steam took her back many years to the first day she knew what it was like to be alone. She was 14 when 9:38 she started cleaning houses in the Brentwood neighborhood. A girl with badly braided hair, dark skin, and hands 9:44 cracked by cheap soap. By that age, she knew the names of all the stain removers and how to fold a boss's shirts without 9051 wrinkling them. At night, when she returned home, her mother no longer waited up for her. She was already 9:57 asleep. Her absent father had left with a woman from a bar. Ellie didn't cry. She just swallowed and the next day woke 10:04 up before the rooster crowed to go back to work. At 17, she got pregnant with Jackson. His father was a boy 3 years, 11 older than her. He promised they would marry, that he would get her out of that life. They lasted 8 months. The day he found out the baby was a boy, he disappeared. He left with a woman who sold cosmetics and never returned. Ellie didn't 25 didn't cry. She just clenched her jaw, adjusted her scarf, and went out to look for more houses to clean. She raised Tunson 33 Jackson alone, carrying him on her back while she washed other people's clothes. When he started walking, she taught him 140 to play with detergent caps as if they were toy cars. They had no toys, but Tundi 45 they had stories. No refrigerator, but they had hot soup. No television, but Tun 52 they had songs she sang to him until he fell asleep. He was her whole world. Tun 58, when Jackson turned 6, one of Ellie's clients offered to pay for his elementary school tuition at a private 1103 school if she agreed to work full-time and live in. Ellie didn't think twice. She left her house, lived on the patron's 1110 rooftop apartment, and every weekend she crossed the city to see her son. She never arrived empty-handed. Sometimes a 11D17 new notebook, sometimes just a snack, but always with a heart ready to listen to whatever Jackson wanted to tell her. 24 years passed and Jackson grew up. Ellie struggled to learn how to write her signature, her hand trembling just so 1132 she could enroll him as the responsible party on school papers. She learned to read doctor's prescriptions and then 1138 bank statements. She couldn't write well, but she understood enough not to let herself be pushed around, or so she 1145 thought. At 16, Jackson told her mom, when I make it big, the first thing I'll 1150 do is buy you a house where the cold doesn't seep through the walls. And she replied without hesitation, don't buy 1157 me anything, son. Just don't forget me. Then came college. Ellie sold the only 24 land her father left her, a patch of earth in rural Georgia, where she had always dreamed of building a small 12C10 cabin. She sold it for less than it was worth because Jackson needed to pay the enrollment fee. And as always, she 2017 didn't hesitate. My son is going to be an accountant, she proudly told her neighbors. He's going to get out of 1224 this life. And he did get out, but not as she imagined. It was in his third 1230 semester that he met Tanya, a girl with straight hair, long nails, and a magazine smile. From the first time 1237 Ellie saw her, she felt a pang in her stomach. Not from jealousy or envy, but 12I42, because this woman had the look of someone who only knew how to take, never to give. Tanya came from a family that 1249 pretended to have more than they did. Her mother, Rhonda, wore knockoff designer clothes and spoke as if she had 1256 studied in Europe. The first time they visited Ellie's house, they discreetly twisted their mouths. What a lovely 1304 color! The walls are very rustic, Rhonda said with a sarcastic tone. Tanya, 1310, seeing the kitchen, made a comment in a low voice that Ellie would never forget. I don't know how Jackson grew up here. 1317, this looks like a shelter, not a home. Ellie smiled as always, but something 1324 broke inside her. Years passed and Tanya gained ground. First, she asked that 1331 Ellie not visit so often, then that she not voice opinions on their decisions, then that she not attend certain family 1338 events because she didn't fit in. Jackson, confused and lovesick, slowly 1334 distanced himself. One night, already living with Tanya, Jackson was the last time he did so 1351 without warning. She prepared him pot roast and gravy, his favorite meal. 13 to fee 6, Mom. Tanya says you're too involved in our lives, that you don't let us grow as a couple. I just want you to be happy, 1403, son, Ellie said, watching her food grow cold. I don't need you to take care of 1409 me anymore, he replied as if that hurt her. I'm a man now, and men forget who 1415 made them men. Ellie didn't cry. She just got up, cleared the table, and told 1420 him to take the rest of the roast with him. The following months were a parade of subtle dismissals. Tanya began 1427 managing Jackson's finances, convinced him to change bank accounts, and asked him not to tell his mother everything. 1434, according to her, Ellie was a limited woman who wouldn't understand modern life. Jackson, wrapped up in a mixture 1441 of ambition and emotional manipulation, agreed. Ellie began to notice things. A 1448 bank receipt that didn't match, a statement that never arrived, a life insurance policy she didn't remember 1454 authorizing. That's when she decided to talk to Walter. Walter was her first 1459 love, a childhood neighbor who had been a lawyer for decades and now lived alone in an apartment full of old papers and 1505 memories. She sought him out without telling him much. Walter. How can I find out if someone is using my name for 15 of 11 strange things? Are you in trouble, Ellie? No, but I feel like my son isn't 1566 my son anymore. Walter looked at her carefully, asked for the few papers she had, and for weeks reviewed movements, 1524 documents and transfers, until one night he invited her to his house. Ellie, your 1529 son put you as a guarantor on a joint account. You didn't sign anything, but the signature is there. But I don't know 15 and 36 how to write more than my name. They forged your signature. And they've been taking money out little by little for 6/15/42 months. Ellie said nothing. She took the papers, put them in her purse, and left 15/49 in silence. That night, the pain didn't let her sleep, not because of the money 1554, but because of the truth. Her son hadn't just been manipulated. He had become an 1600 active part of the betrayal. He robbed his own mother. In the following days, 1605 Tanya and Rhonda organized the trip to Rome. Jackson, without a stable job, 1610 sold his car and then suggested using Ellie's savings. It's family money, 1616, Tanya said. Besides, your mother isn't going to use it. Don't be silly. I don't know, it's everything she has. And why 1623 is she hoarding it? You're her son. You're not stealing it. You're just borrowing it early. Jackson hesitated. 1630, but he did it. One night from his home computer, he transferred all the money. He did it quickly without much thought. 1637, like someone wanting to pull out a tooth without anesthesia. He finished, took a deep breath, closed 1644 the laptop, and didn't look back. Ellie discovered the betrayal the next day. 1649, she didn't cry, she didn't scream. She just wrote a sentence in her notebook. 1654, my son didn't die, but the mother and me did. From then on, everything changed. Her 1701 body kept aging, but her spirit hardened. She began to walk differently. 1706, her back straighter. She started making calls, checking emails, visiting offices. Something was being prepared. 1713, while in Rome, Jackson walked the stone streets, believing he had won something. In south-central Los Angeles, his mother, 1720, was weaving the web that would return everything they had taken from her. And Tanya was already planning how to 1727 disappear without a trace. What Jackson didn't know was that Ellie was no longer the woman he remembered. That woman had 1734 died. In her place remained a wounded mother, but an alert one. And when a wounded mother awakens, there is no hell 17 the for one she is unwilling to cross. The betrayal no longer hurt. What hurt was the certainty of having been invisible, of 1748 having been used, of having been erased as if she had never mattered. But Ellie was not willing to disappear in silence. 1755 is what mothers keep quiet about can also kill. Ellie said nothing. Not 1801 that time, nor the next, nor the one after. Her silence was no longer the kind that bleeds inside. It was a sharp 1808 silence, one that observes, registers, and calculates. The words dried up in 1803 to her throat as if they no longer made sense. Because when a mother understands that she has been replaced by a mask, 1819, she no longer screams. She transforms. Jackson didn't notice the difference, or 1825, he didn't want to notice it. He was too busy living the life he had dreamed of, a life that didn't smell like fresh 1831 laundry or coffee. A life where the voice that woke him up didn't say my baby boy, but sir, a clean, elegant. Tanya settled into his world as if she had always been its owner, and 1846 he enchanted, let her. He was fascinated by how she spoke with words 1852 Ellie never used, how she walked gracefully in high heels, how she referred to things as if everything 1858 belonged to her. But behind her easy laugh and filtered photos was a subtle 1905 cruel and precise machine. Tanya knew what she wanted it fast. 1910 a name, a surname, an account, and a man who could sustain her facade. The first 1906 comments came disguised as jokes. Honey, why does your mother always have to have an opinion on everything? 1924, I don't want our child to grow up surrounded by poverty-level thinking, she said while doing her nails in the 1929 living room. Jackson let out an uncomfortable laugh. It's not that she wants to have an opinion. It's just hard 1935 for her to let go of control. She's always been like that, it's not control. 1940, it's pity disguised as love. Women like your mother think they're martyrs for raising kids alone, but they don't 1946 realize that the past doesn't give us the right to drag others down. I don't want that for you or for me or for our 1953 children. Little by little, Tanya began deciding when they could visit Ellie in 1958 when they couldn't. First, it was that they were busy, then that it was better to meet in public places, and finally 2006 that she didn't feel comfortable entering Ellie's house because it smelled musty. Jackson accepted 2011 everything, and every time Ellie asked why they didn't visit her as often, he lowered his head. We have too many 2018 things going on, Mom. You know, work, wedding things. Ellie only nodded, but 20 to 24 there was no longer any naivety in her eyes. She was starting to put pieces together like someone hand-stitching a 20 and 30 torn sack. Rhonda, Tanya's mother, didn't take long to get involved. Never 2036 with blatant insults, but always with carefully chosen phrases to sound educated, but with just the right edge 2042 to hurt. Miss Eleanor, I apologize if I'm direct, but didn't you ever think 2048 about moving to a more decent neighborhood? I mean, you're older now. This area isn't safe for someone your 27 and 55 age, and with that money you have saved, you could buy something better, right? 2100 Ellie looked Rhonda in the eye. She didn't blink, didn't say anything, but 2106, something inside her crunched. That day, she understood that it wasn't 2111 that they wanted her far away. It was that they never wanted her close. 1/21/16 Sunday during a family lunch organized by Tanya, Ellie decided to speak to her 20th and 21 son. She waited for the moment Rhonda went to the restroom and Tanya was distracted by her phone. She looked at 20 and 28 Jackson with the same love as always, but her voice no longer trembled. Son, 2134, are you sure this woman is right for you? Have you noticed how she looks at you when you're not looking? How she 2140 talks about me? Jackson swallowed. Tanya looked up from her phone. Rhonda 2146 had just come out of the restroom. The atmosphere shifted like when a storm rolls in, and then Jackson exploded. 21 and 53, that's enough. Mom, you're jealous because I have another woman in my life now. You won't say it, but you think it. 21 and 59, you never stood for anyone else being important to me. Ellie didn't defend herself. She didn't even flinch. She 22-6 just lowered her gaze to her plate, put down her fork, and in that silence she knew she had lost him. When they said 2014 goodbye that afternoon, no one hugged her. Upon arriving home, she carefully 2919 took off her shoes as if she didn't want to bother anyone, even though she was alone. She sat on her bed and thought 2026 about the last time her son had said. Without her asking him to 2231, she couldn't remember. The following weeks were a hell disguised as routine. 22-37, Tanya and Rhonda began to visit Jackson more at his office. They brought him lunch, talked business, and suggested 2043 investments. One day, Tanya asked for access to his account so she could better organize household expenses. 2050, trust me, she said, taking off her shirt in front of him. Or are we not a 2056 team? Jackson, trapped between lust and foolishness, said yes as always. 23-4 Ellie, meanwhile, didn't stay still. She knew something was wrong, but she didn't know how to prove it. That's when she 23-11 reached out to her neighbor. Brenda, a woman who had been an accountant for 20 years at a pharmaceutical company in 2036C, was now retired, teaching neighborhood children to add and subtract. 2030-22 Brenda, I need you to explain something to me. How can I tell if someone is messing with my accounts? Brenda 2328 frowned. Your son? Yes. Do you have access to your bank statement? They 23-35 don't come to me anymore. And transfers, I've never made one. I don't even know 2341 how to do that. For several nights, Brenda taught Ellie how to access the bank portal on her 23,048 cell phone, how to review movements, and how to identify deposits and withdrawals. 23 for the first time she saw the list of transactions. Ellie felt the world falling on her. Large amounts recent 2001 dates, transfers that coincided with the days Jackson did or asked for some 2040-06 document, money leaving without explanation. He had access. He asked me for it to do 2040 of some paperwork. He said it was for insurance. Ellie, it's not paperwork. It's theft. Her heart broke in two, but 2040-20 she didn't cry. Instead, she asked for a notebook and began writing down every single transaction day time amount. 24-28, every dollar stolen had a name attached to it. One Friday night when everything 2040-34 seemed lost, Brenda showed her something else. See this transaction. They signed 2439, your name here to activate a joint account, but the signature isn't yours. It's a crude copy. Ellie touched the 2446 screen as if touching an open wound. They didn't even bother to hide it. Music, what are you going to do? Ellie closed 204053 her phone, took a deep breath and said, nothing. Not yet. Meanwhile in Rome, 2500 Jackson began to feel uneasy. Not from guilt, but because Tanya no longer looked at him the same way. She had 25-07 changed. She no longer kissed him with enthusiasm. She spent hours on her phone 25-12 laughing to herself. And Rhonda no longer bothered to pretend she tolerated him. One night, he heard a 25-20 conversation between them while pretending to sleep. It's done. Why keep pretending? As soon as we get back 25-27, we're selling everything and ditching him. And if he finds out, he's slow. He 25-33 won't even notice. And if he does, so what? The old lady is going to die anyway. Who is going to defend him? 25-40 Ellie from Los Angeles began to move with precision. She visited a Bank 2545 office, requested the complete statements, printed them, and put them in envelopes. Then she went to the 25-51 public registry to ask if there were properties under her name that she didn't remember signing. There she 25-58 discovered something even worse. Jackson had tried to register her house as a shared investment property using altered 26-905 documents. He didn't succeed due to a technical error, but he had tried. That 26-11 day, Ellie didn't go straight home. She walked to an old church at the back of the neighborhood, not to pray, just 2069 to sit on the bench and look at the altar. Give me patience, God. Not to 26-24 forgive him, but not to destroy him with my own hands. Silence enveloped her. When she 20-60-30 returned, she turned on the radio, played a blues song, and began to knit. But what she was knitting wasn't 26-36 clothing, it was revenge. The seeds of ingratitude were already sown and they were germinating. The harvest was near. 26-44, Ellie knew it. She felt it in her bones, in the way the wind blew through the cracks in the door, as if coming to warn 26-50 her that everything that had been buried in silence would soon sprout. The pre-dawn hours weighed less on her. The 26-7 cold no longer bothered her. She just counted the days not with anxiety, but 27-03 with strategy, with calmness, like someone sharpening a knife slowly, knowing they will use it at the exact 27-10 moment. One morning, while sweeping the living room with the old straw broom that had lasted so long, she decided to 27-centi move the armchair to clean underneath. Beneath it were dirt tiny papers, a dry 2024 pen, and a torn, badly folded white envelope tucked into a recycled plastic 27-29 bag. She was going to throw it all away without looking, but something inside her screamed at her to check. First, she 27-37 opened the bag. Inside was a document. She read it twice without fully 27-43 understanding what it said. It listed her full name, her address, and a signature similar to hers. Then she read 27-50, the header. Last will and testament. She felt something squeeze her chest. She 27-56 sat on the floor with the document spread out on her legs and read it again. It was a will where she 2002 supposedly ceded her house and savings to Jackson in case of her death, and at 2807 the bottom a signature, her signature forged. She felt the silence of the 28A13 house weigh more than ever. Only the clock's ticking and the distant barking of a dog broke the quiet. She didn't 28-20 cry, she wasn't surprised. But this time something did break inside her. It 28-26 wasn't the betrayal, it was the confirmation. She called Walter. Come over. What 28-32 happened? I found what you needed to see. 2 hours later, Walter was sitting 28-38 in her kitchen with the document in hand. He read it carefully, shaking his head in negation. This is not only 2084 file illegal, it's dangerous. If he had filed it, you could have lost the house without ever knowing. Do you think it 28-52 was him? Walter stayed silent. He placed the paper on the table. This isn't your 28-59 signature, Ellie. And you have no idea how to draft a will. It's obviously not yours. The most serious part is that 2906, this is a draft, And if there's a draft, there may have been a real attempt to file it. Ellie stared at her own 2913 wrinkled hands stained by the years but still steady. She remembered the day 29 she finally made the last mortgage payment on the house. 30 years of effort. Reheated meals, broken shoes 2927 working in the hottest days, cleaning up other people's messes, enduring boss's 2932 shouts, all to have something of her own, something no one could take away. 29 and 38 you wanted to kill me on paper, she said without raising her voice. Walter 2944 looked up. He didn't know if it was a metaphor or a literal truth. The silence 2090-49 between them was so long that the boiling of the coffee on the stove became the only sound in the kitchen. 29 feet. And now, what are you going to do? Ellie smiled. The same smile Jackson 3000 didn't know how to read in time. Now I'm gonna bury him but awake. 3007 not even 3 days had passed since that discovery when she received an unexpected call from Dr. Evans, the 3050 internist at the health clinic, where Ellie had occasional checkups. I need 30 leaned in you to come in, Miss Eleanor, today if you can. She felt her legs tremble. She walked to the medical center with the 3026 same dignity with which she had faced everything in her life. She entered the office in her usual clothing, her scarf 30C33 tied tight, and the notebook where she wrote down every pill. The doctor greeted her kindly but without hope. In 3040 his gaze was a compassion that smelled of farewell. We did new blood tests and 3045 the results are not good. She didn't respond, she just looked at him expecting what she already knew. You 30C53 have leukemia, ma'am. It's in an advanced stage. It pains me to tell you this way, but there's no time for 3059 pleasantries. Your immune system is compromised. We estimate you have about 6 months. Ellie froze. She stared at a 3108 fixed point on the wall, a small bird-shaped patch of dampness. Not a 3113 single tear, not a single question. Do you understand what I'm telling you? I 3119 understand how much it costs me to die with dignity. The doctor shifted uncomfortably in his 3125 seat. There are options. We can start chemotherapy, but it's not certain 3130 you'll respond. The treatment is aggressive and expensive. Does it take my life faster? Not 3137 necessarily. Then no. I don't like the thought of death catching me in a gown. The doctor 3144 didn't know what to say. He had never seen anyone take the news of their own death with such composure. Ellie stood 3110-51 up, took her purse, and before leaving the office, she turned to him. 6 months is enough. For what I have to do, it's 3158 more than enough. She walked back home not because she couldn't afford a ride 3203, but because she needed to feel the city. She wanted every step to take her back to her roots, her history, her purpose. 32 High Lemon she crossed the street where she was once almost hit by a car while taking Jackson to press school. She passed the 3218 market where she worked cleaning restrooms for 40 a day. She waved to Mr. Theodore the juice stand man who 3025 had no teeth but a good memory. When she arrived home, she went straight to her 3030 room. She pulled out a wooden box hidden under the bed. Inside was her notebook with notes, clippings, receipts, unsent 32-38 letters, and an old envelope where she kept the only photo she had of Jackson as a child when he still slept hugging 32D45 her leg. She looked at it for a long time, then turned on the stove, put water to boil, and as the steam rose 3252 she murmured to herself, no more praying now. The work begins. The first 3258 thing she did was go with Walter to file a preemptive complaint, not as a mother. 3304, but as a citizen, they reported the forgery of her signature, the attempt to appropriate property, and attached the 303011 evidence. Then they requested the temporary freezing of the bank account from which Jackson had withdrawn the 3316 money. To achieve this, they used a clause that allowed the stopping of financial movements if elder financial 33 and 23 abuse was suspected. It wasn't easy, but Walter knew the loopholes. He had lost 30-30-29 faith in the law years ago, but for Ellie, he was willing to dust off his 30-30-34 profession. Are you ready for what's coming? He asked as they signed the papers. I was born ready. I just didn't 30-41 know it. After that, Ellie went to the store, bought a new notebook bound in red, and started writing what would be 33-48 her final log. Not one for weeping. 33s and 53 on the first page she wrote, To my son Jackson, I delivered you from my 30-30-59 womb with pain. I gave you my life with love, and you ripped away my dignity 34 without blinking. This is not revenge, it is justice. And justice is all I have 30-40-10 left to die in peace. Meanwhile, Rome. Jackson and Tanya 34 and 16 continued to pretend to be happy. They uploaded daily photos, made videos with filters, and showed off plates of food 34 and 22 they couldn't even pronounce. But the tension was growing more evident. Tanya no longer shared the bed. Rhonda spent 34-29 all her time on her phone. And Jackson felt something slipping away, like an 34 internal alarm that wouldn't stop ringing. One night, while searching his email for a flight confirmation, he 3441 found a hidden folder. It was an automatic backup of Tanya's messages with another person at first. He 30-40-47 thought it was spam, but when he opened it, he read what he shouldn't have. Tanya, we almost have everything. The 3455 idiot doesn't suspect a thing. Contact in the econ. Done. As soon as 3502 we get back, we're leaving him. Contact. What if he finds out? Tanya, I don't 3508 care. Let him rot. I'm not staying with someone who's like a traumatized single mom. Jackson felt his stomach 35 and 4 drop. He closed the computer, said nothing, and pretended to sleep. But he couldn't close his eyes that night. And 35s and 21 for the first time in a long time, he thought of his mother, of her voice, of the way she called him my little boy 35 and 28 even when he was taller than her, of her rice pudding, of how she laughed at old black and white sitcoms, of how she 35 and 35 touched his forehead when he was sick, and of how she used to tell him, nobody will ever care for you like I do. 35 and 42 he wanted to call her, but he didn't. Ellie, for her part, expected nothing. 3549, there was no longer any tenderness in her waiting, only planning. She visited 3554 offices, made calls, and activated the immigration clause. She declared 3600 Jackson's transactions as suspicious. The system was slow, but it activated 3605. An international alert was issued for his return to the United States. They wouldn't put him in jail, but they would 3611 make him accountable. In the red notebook, Ellie wrote, "There is no justice more complete than that which is 3600 delivered without screaming. I will watch him lose everything without lifting a finger. Karma is not paid with 3625 violence. It is served with patience, and so the second betrayal didn't break 3032 her. It converted her into something stronger, colder, freer. 3638, the mother died in her, but the woman awoke. It was only a matter of days, 36543, until Jackson returned to the U.S., and he had no idea of the earthquake that was waiting for him. Jackson believed that 36 of 50 hell was a place with fire, punishment, and screams. He didn't imagine it could 36 and 55 be as cold as the cobblestone streets of Rome, or as humiliating as a card being declined in a restaurant full of 37 tourists. It all started with a denial at the payment terminal, then another 3708 and another. In less than 48 hours, he found himself empty-handed. No cash, no 3750 active accounts, and with two women looking at him as if he were a beggar they had just picked up off the street. 37 thousands and a yell one. Tanya yelled at him in the middle of the street in front of dozens of people who stopped to stare. "You shameless idiot. 3728, what did you do with the money? I told you not to trust your poverty-stricken mommy. Now you've screwed us all." 3736 Jackson tried to speak, but there weren't enough words to explain what he didn't even understand. He only knew 3742 something was wrong, that the accounts were frozen, that his name had been linked to an international financial 3748 fraud investigation, and that he had to report to the American embassy the next day. That night, Rhonda looked at him 3756 with a mixture of contempt and annoyance. "I warned you, Tanya. This poor boy isn't even good for washing 3803 dishes. I'm going to a hostel. I'm not sleeping in this dump." Tanya followed 3008 her. Not a word, not a goodbye. Jackson stayed in the hotel room alone, 3842, with a half-empty suitcase and the buzz of betrayal echoing in his ears. 308019, meanwhile, in Los Angeles, Ellie was weaving the last threads of her plan like a winter blanket. Everything fit, 3826, every movement made sense. Walter helped her gather the necessary documents to activate the international 3833 capital block, relying on the complaint of fraudulent use of an elderly person's accounts. He contacted an old 308040 acquaintance of Walter's, Mr. Ernest, a federal agent in the IRS Criminal Investigation Division, and managed to 38047 activate an alert for illicit fund withdrawal, which implied a mandatory review upon Jackson's entry into S308054 territory. It wasn't revenge. There was no hate. There was justice. In her red 39-noted notebook, she wrote, "Sometimes a mother's love also has to hurt, not out of hate, but for a lesson, because what 3908 is allowed is repeated, and what is repeated rots. I didn't give birth to a thief, but the world turned him into 399141, and if I have to be the one to put the brakes on him, so be it." Brenda 3920 accompanied her in silence through many of those procedures. She was no longer just her neighbor. She had become her 3926 accomplice. "Doesn't it hurt, Ellie?" "Of course it hurts. It hurts like tearing 39A32 off my own skin. But there are pains that heal." The meeting at the embassy was a 3938 spectacle of shame for Jackson. They made him go into a cold, windowless room with a young lawyer and a translator who 39A44 spoke in a mechanical tone. They explained that there was an active complaint in the U.S., that the funds had 3950 been frozen by a preemptive order, and that he had to account for them upon his return. Jackson left with a defeated 3957 face. He felt everything crumbling. He thought of his mother. For the first time in a long time, he thought of her 4005 voice, her look, and he knew that all of this came from her. And 4010 then, like a lost child, he dialed her number. "Mom," he said as soon as she 4006 answered. On the other end of the phone, Ellie was in her kitchen cleaning black-eyed peas with the old strainer as if 401-22 nothing unusual were happening. She recognized the voice immediately. Her hand trembled. but not enough to drop 428 the phone. Mom, what did you? They took everything from me. I'm alone. 40 the 6 dies. Tanya left. Rhonda too. They say you did this. 41. Ellie stayed silent, took a deep breath, and then replied with a serene, firm 40,000 for 6 voice, as if speaking from a place Jackson could no longer access. I didn't take anything from you, son. I just 4,054. Stop what you were taking from me. Mom, they want to arrest me. You said you would always be there for me. I was 4102 until you stopped being there for yourself. Please help me. I don't know what to do. Learn. She hung up. She gave Ford and 10 him nothing more. No tears, no apologies, no explanations. It was the 41s and 16, first time she allowed herself to think that her son needed to suffer to understand. Because sometimes pain 4102 teaches more than love. That night, Ellie didn't sleep, not out 4127 of anguish, but because she sat down to write him a letter. It wasn't a farewell. It was an emotional testament. 41 and 35, a letter she would leave in the red notebook on the last page. It was for him for when he returned. My dearest 41 of 42, Jackson, you were my reason for getting up every morning. You were my fight, my strength, my pride. I gave you what I 49 had and what I didn't. I denied myself food, rest, and company for you, and I 41 and 55. Don't regret it. I did it with love, but you forgot who you were. You surrounded 4,200 yourself with ghosts and expensive perfume. And in their eagerness to kill me while I was alive, they forced me to 4207 wake up. I don't hate you, I couldn't. But I am no longer the woman who waits 4212 in silence for her son to remember her. Now I am the one who teaches you even if it hurts. And if you ever truly repent, 4221, this letter will be here. Not to save you, but so you can't say no one warned 4226 you. At the end of the letter, she drew a small heart. It was the sweetest thing 42 and 32 she had left. Jackson wandered the streets of Rome aimlessly. He slept in 4237 cheap host. Sometimes he ate, sometimes he didn't. He had no one to call. 4242 neither Tanya nor Rhonda answered, and he knew that his return to the U.S. wouldn't be a landing. It would be a 4249 crash. Finally, he took a return flight, scared, ashamed. With 42 and 57, he knew they were waiting for him, not with hugs, but with outstanding debts. 43,002 Ellie, for her part, was ready. Her health was deteriorating. But her soul, 4307, was clearer than ever. She had shaved her head before the chemo could take her hair. She did it in her bathroom with 4340 sewing scissors. She looked in the mirror and said, "Now I look like who I am." Walter accompanied her last 4/30/21 doctor's appointment. The doctor confirmed that the cancer was advancing rapidly. She nodded. You know, she 40/30/28 said, "I was never afraid to die. What hurt me was not being able to leave in peace. But now I know I will leave with 43/36, everything settled." That night in her bed alone, Ellie felt a sharp pain in 4342, her chest. She doubled over, but she didn't call anyone. She just hugged herself, murmuring her son's name, not 430/50 as a complaint, but as a farewell. The silence of the storm was just that. The 4356 exact moment before the collapse. The fin calm that precedes the inevitable. But Ellie didn't fear the 4403 end because she had done what she had to do, and Jackson was about to face the debris of the life he himself destroyed. 4410 when the plane landed in the U.S., Ellie felt no emotion. She wasn't surprised by the captain's welcome or the strange 404017 language mixed with the airport announcements. She didn't care about the glass ceilings or the foreign faces. She 4424 hadn't traveled to admire anything. She had traveled to close a cycle, not as a mother but as a witness. At almost 74, 42 years old, her body was trembling, yes, but not with fear. The physical pain was 4438, already part of the scenery. What sustained her was purpose. She had sold 4043 a few things to pay for that ticket. The blender, the large mirror in the living room, and a ring she kept since Jackson 404050 was a child. She didn't regret it. The cost was insignificant compared to the 44/56 emotional freedom she sought. At the airport, Walter was waiting for her. He 4501 had arrived a day earlier to prepare everything. He had pulled strings, processed the permits, and arranged for 4508 Ellie to be present at the embassy when Jackson testified. It wasn't legally required, but the consular official was 4550, an old friend and also the son of a single mother. He understood the request 45 in Honda without needing too many explanations. When he saw her arrive, Walter took off 4525, his hat. "You don't look like a woman who is about to face her son. And you 45/30 don't look like a retired lawyer," Ellie replied without looking directly at him. "Are you sure about this?" "I'm alive." 45/537's, that's enough. They walked to the car. Walter tried to ease the tension with a few anecdotes, but 45544 Ellie didn't engage. She wasn't there to converse. She had one last task. In her 4550 purse, she carried a thick yellow envelope with items that weren't of material value, but held eternal weight. 4557, meanwhile, in a hotel room on the other side of the city, Jackson stood in front of the mirror. His eyes were sunk in his 4604, beard was messy, and his expression swung between exhaustion and panic. He 4609 was going to present himself at the American embassy to sign an official declaration that would separate him from 46015, the joint accounts with his mother. But he also knew that by doing so, He would admit he had managed those accounts with 4622 false documentation. In exchange, the embassy had agreed not to arrest him, but to register him on an economic watch 406029 list, and his return to the U.S. would be conditional. He would have to present himself before a financial authority 46036 upon stepping on American soil. When he went down to the hotel lobby, he saw $46 for two Tanya waiting for him. She wore dark sunglasses and a red coat that looked borrowed. Her face didn't reflect love 46-50 or resentment, only convenience. "You're late," Tanya said with annoyance. "I 46FV6 didn't know you were coming. You also didn't know you were so useless. And here we are. What do you want?" 4703 to see you fall. Jackson clenched his fists. What she said no longer hurt him. 4709, what hurt was having allowed himself to be molded by a woman who considered him disposable. Upon arriving at the 4760 embassy, the officials led them into a white, silent waiting room with metal chairs. Tanya chewed gum as if she were 4723 in a shopping mall. Jackson sweated. Every minute weighed like an hour, then 4729 the door opened and Ellie entered. She wore a gray sweater, a long skirt, and a 47934 dark blue scarf over her shoulders. Her now sparse hair was covered with a black 4740 bandana. She walked slowly but straight. She held the yellow envelope in her 4745 hands. When she crossed the room, her eyes met Jackson's. He suddenly stood up. "What are you doing here?" he asked, 4753, his voice cracking. "I came to watch you sign, not as a mother, as a witness." 4759 Tanya let out a harsh laugh. How sweet. The old woman came to put on her final 4804 show. Ellie looked at her not with hate, but with pity. 1409, "You took everything she had," she said in a low voice. "But I taught him what 48015 he'll never have again. Forgiveness? Tanya, forgiveness. Mom, your 40-21 son is a failure. You raised a parasite." "No, I raised a good boy." "You 48 and turned him into this, and he let you do it." Jackson closed his eyes. He couldn't take it anymore. "Mom, I don't know 48036 when I lost myself." Ellie approached, handing him the envelope. "The first one's from when you 48C43, learned to walk and write. Here's your first letter to Santa Claus. Once you asked me for a bicycle, and I told you 48-50 only if you got an A in math, and you did. I kept my promise, son." Jackson 4856 took the envelope, his hands trembling. "And here is also the letter I wrote you." 4901, "Not to save you, but so you can't say no one warned you." They sat down. The 4907 embassy official came in and explained the procedure. Jackson signed. At that moment, the camera of an American 4914 tourist waiting for his passport recorded part of the final dialogue. The images showed Ellie standing, her eyes 49-20 moist, saying, "You were my life. Today I understand it. 49-27, you weren't born to love me, only to serve as my mirror." The recording was 4932 uploaded to social media that same day. In a few hours, it went viral. People 49037 commented from all over. "That mother is a queen. That's how you teach a lesson without violence. Dignity doesn't age." 49-46 Jackson couldn't lift his head. The official looked at him with compassion. "All done, you can go. Your mother, too." 4954 Tanya had already left. She didn't wait for anyone. She stormed off just as she had arrived, without apology, without a 52 soul. On the way back to the hotel, Ellie and Jackson walked in silence down a narrow street in Rome. On a corner 5009 she stopped. "This is where we part ways." "Mom," he tried to say, but his 50-fossil voice broke. "I gave you everything I had, even my silence. Now I give you the 50-20 clause, only thing you refuse to accept the truth. Will you forgive me?" "I already 50-25 forgave you." "The problem is that you haven't forgiven yourself yet." "Can I do anything?" "Yes. Live with what you did 53-4 and make it count for something." Ellie turned and walked away slowly. She never saw him again. That night, Jackson 5541 opened the envelope in his room. The photos were yellowed but intact. The letter, written in blue ink, smelled of Figly 48 lavender. When he finished reading it, the world crashed down on him. He knelt 50-53 on the floor and cried as he hadn't cried since he was a child. Not from punishment, but from shame. And he knew 5100 he had lost something he couldn't recover. The dignity of a mother. And that justice, when it comes from the one 5107 who loved you most, is the hardest of all. Jackson returned to the U.S. in 5100 the suitcases, without promises, without glory. He passed 5199 through customs like a ghost. No cameras, no family waiting for him, no one asking about him. The only things he 50-26 brought with him were the yellow envelope with his childhood photos and the letter his mother had left him. The 51-32 rest, he had lost everything. The Los Angeles airport felt grayer than 5137 ever. The air was heavy, dense, as if his guilt floated in the atmosphere. He 5143 had nowhere to go. Tanya wasn't answering calls. His mother-in-law had blocked all his contacts, and his former 5149 office colleagues pretended not to recognize him. He had been exposed on social media, mocked by thousands. 5157 branded as the ungrateful son who stole from his mother to take his wife and mother-in-law to Europe. He walked the 5203 streets of the neighborhood where he grew up. South Central was the same. The same graffiti on the 5209 walls, the same street vendors selling goods at dusk. But something inside him was no longer the same. Every street had 52C7 in echo, a memory, a reproach. He passed his old school. He remembered when his 1523 mother walked him hand in hand, her apron smelling of bleach and her shoes worn down. She always said, "You won't 5230 live scrubbing floors like me. You'll have your own desk and your suit." And he 52E35 had it for a while until he exchanged it for lies. Ellie was already back. She 52D40 had returned to Loney. She had lived her whole life in the company of her silence, and at 52D46 didn't weigh on her. She settled back into her house with cracks in the walls, the same concrete floor, and the rocking 52F3 chair that creaked when she swayed. She settled into her life like someone returning to the place they should never 5259 have left. Walter brought her medicine. Brenda prepared light soups for her. The 5306 closest neighbors looked after her in spontaneous shifts, not because she asked for it, but because dignity is 53 also honored while one is alive. She became a neighborhood legend. Some 5318 children thought she had traveled to punish the wicked, others that she was a witch, others that she had faced the 5324 mob. Only a few knew the truth, and they said nothing. 5330, she listened to blues music in the afternoons. Sometimes from the doorway she watched the neighborhood children 5336 play. She laughed with them. She gave them lollipops. Listening intently when 53I41 they told childhood lies, she had recovered her peace but not her strength. The cancer was advancing 5349 slowly but steadily. Every week she seemed more fragile. Her clothes were 5354 too big. But she never stopped walking around her house. She never let herself fall. 15402 Sunday morning, Jackson walked to the door. He carried a bag with donuts. He 5407 had spent the whole night wondering if he should go. He hadn't slept or eaten, but something inside him demanded it. He 5450 didn't expect her to open the door. He just wanted to see her, to see if she was still breathing. From the opposite 5421 sidewalk, he saw her sitting in her rocking chair. She wore an old sweater and a shawl draped over her shoulders. 5428, her face was thin but not defeated. She smiled at some children playing nearby. 5433, one of them brought her a flower picked from the park, and she hugged him as if he were her own blood. Jackson didn't 5440 cross the street. He just watched her, felt a knot in his throat, walked 5445 slowly, left the bag of donuts on the porch and left. Ellie didn't look up 5451, but she felt him. She didn't open the door. Not that day. Over the following 54 to 56 weeks, Jackson returned, always at the same time. He left something: flowers, 5503, pastries, a note without a name. He never dared to knock. He never asked to 5509 enter. He had no right. He was just paying without knowing if the debt would 55 ever end. One night, Ellie picked up her red notebook, opened it to the last page, 5520, and with a trembling hand wrote her final note. It wasn't long, just enough. 5026, just like her. "My son, love is not demanded, it is given. And if you have 5531 learned that, then you are not lost anymore. Don't look for me when I'm gone. I will be in every mistake you 5538 choose not to repeat. In every act of kindness you do without expecting anything in return. If you want a 5544, forgive yourself, start with others. And if you ever manage to see your mother in the eyes of another woman, don't fail 55 of 50 her. That will be my redemption." She signed with her full name. She folded 55 for 6 the letter, put it in an envelope, and wrote in black ink. For Jackson, 56-1, the morning she stopped breathing was bright. The sun streamed through the windows. On her lap were the red 5607 notebook, the envelope, and a blanket knitted by her own hands. The neighbors found her surrounded by flowers that the 506014 children had left. Her face held a serenity that few can fake. There was no drama, no screaming, only the calm after 506022, the storm. Walter arrived first. He looked at her in silence, gently closed her eyes. He 5628 didn't cry. He knew she didn't want tears. He knew she had died as she lived with dignity. Brenda prepared the wake 5636 with the help of the neighbors. It was humble but full of love. They didn't accept elaborate wreaths, only flowers, 56 of 44 from the park, children's drawings, and the songs she loved to listen to. Jackson wasn't notified, but he knew. He 5652 knew the moment the wind changed and something in his chest went out. He ran to the house, saw the open door, and 56 of 58 walked in slowly. There were candles in the living room. No one stopped him. No 57-3-1 hugged him. He went to his mother's body. He knelt down. He touched her hands. They were cold. Next to her, he 5711 found the envelope with his name. He opened it. He read every word aloud. 5717 alone in a whisper. He cried, but not like before. He cried in silence, like 5723 her. In a corner of the room was an open wooden box. Inside, a photo of him as a 5728 child with a handwritten note on the back. "I still believe in you, son." 57-3-4 Jackson took the photo, pressed it against his chest, then went out to the yard and sat in the chair where she 57-340 used to sit. He looked up at the sky and understood that he had lost his mother. 5746, but perhaps he could still find himself. Days later, Thaber said that the 5752 man who came with donuts stayed living in the house. He had no new furniture or luxuries, no visitors, only an old 5759 chair, a red notebook, and a photo on the shelf. Those who leave make space. 5. Those who stay sometimes fill it with memory and sometimes with redemption. Did you like the story? And which city 5812 are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story 5818, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for 58C23, your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen you can see 2 new life stories 58C29 that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next live 58C35 story with love and respect.